Welcome back to the channel. So this time we're going to build the impossible. It's an Italeri kit in a Tamiya box. So obviously I'm joking. Often you'll hear that Italeri kits are unbuildable. You're also here doing the rounds at the minute that we desperately need a new Crusader because all we've got is the old Italeri one, which isn't up to scratch. So here we go. We've got this box. We're going to have a little look at this, and we're going to build this one right the way through. Not worry about paint or anything. It's just a build review and see what we've got. So the Tamiya reboxing really just gives us a couple figures that you also get in the Churchill release that they've got, and you also get a few refinements. I've been cross-checking it with the Italeri kit that's just been re-released. There are a few differences. There's weld beads added to the top of the turret. There's an improved light that goes on the side of the turret. There's also, obviously you get the figures and the stowage, and there's a couple other little things that are improved around it, including the front fenders, which actually brings the accuracy up a little bit. So that's pretty good. Now, the Crusader pretty much comes out of the same kind of scenario as the BT tanks. So this Crusader, the running gear I'm talking about, so we've got a Christie suspension generally is what we're looking at, which really is quite iconic in having 5 large road wheels and a small idler at the front and a sprocket at the back. The Russian BT tanks, T-34, similar sort of running gear, and the Crusaders were the same. Now, this kit is very old, comes from the 70s, and it really is a cracking little kit. It really is. There's a few problems that if you don't want to do any edits and you just want to build it straight from the box following the instructions, you're going to get a little bit of trouble here and there. But if you're going to use the sand shields or the side skirts, you don't need to worry about the tracks. To be honest, looking at the tracks, there's actually a surprising amount of detail for the period again. And they're perfectly fine from my point of view. You can hide the join at the top, so you don't need to worry about that. So that's what we're doing here. There's only a couple little problems where it shows its age. So ejector pin marks there on a very obvious plate at the front. Then we've got raised ejector pin marks in and around these areas here, which is where the towing cables are going to go. But it's all simple stuff. Dare I use the phrase basic modelling skills. Now, you don't have to do this. If you don't want to mess about with this, then, wait for the border model one and have a happy life. But if you want to build a Crusader, or you got one of these in the cupboard and you think it's not worth it, I'd give it a go. All I would suggest is it desperately needs a metal gun barrel. That's the only thing I would suggest, to be honest. The rest of it, I think it's quite nice. And I'd like to do some of the earlier ones and maybe actually get a set of tracks for those where they don't have the sand shields, like the Mark II. Or even the Mark 1, but that's for another day. So I'm just showing you here the basic construction, and you will see as we go along some of the things that I have to do, which is you wouldn't expect in a kit just to make it fit. One of them's coming up shortly with trying to get this top deck glued on to the lower hull. The rear portion goes on fine. This back plate that glues on here, it's not much of an issue. I found it went on no problem, as you can see here. Now, one thing to point out that you don't often get in this age of kit is the panels on the underside. So unusual. This is what I'm talking about. So this part here, this is, I imagine, some sort of ejector pin, really, for want of a better word. And it fouls the join. So we just cut it away. And all I'm doing is just showing you live. I'm just cutting the amount that needs to be cut away. There you can see it joins. If we don't cut that away, this is the join we get, and it just won't sit down. So simple stuff, just cut it away and you're on to the next bit. But these are the sort of things you need to look out for. Now, lots of clamps, that's just based on the way that it's designed. Having one large upper hull piece and gluing that down onto the lower hull, it's going to be an issue from a kit that's built in the 70s, so designed in the 70s. So it's going to take a bit of clamping, but that's not something that we should worry about. Just showing you there that I'm just trying to be neat with the gluing, and I raise that plate up, which means it's not actually flush on the edges there, so that I get that nice join. If you actually push it in, which is what we did by cutting that ejector pin mark away, you'd actually get a lip there that you're not meant to have. It's meant to be a flush join. Now, there are accuracy issues, and I'm not going to go into them. There's raised rivets and bolt heads where there should be recessed rivets or recessed screws. Now, I take that on board. What I'm talking about here is the vast majority of people that would probably be put off with this kit due to the known referrals, dare I say, that people give to it. They probably wouldn't worry about that. Now, if you want to build an accurate Crusader Mark III, I wouldn't pick this kit, because I'm not saying that it is accurate. What I'm trying to say is it's perfectly buildable, and for most people, for an out-of-the-box build, is reasonably... It looks the part. It looks like a Crusader. Now, back along, I was showing you about these lights, and what I actually did was looked at the tank at Bovington and noticed that these lights were a bit different. So I've just cut them about using that as reference and added a piece of plasticard there as a kind of different lens. They weren't like they were in the kit, and a strip of plasticard there at the back of the driver's compartment behind the hatches, just to fill that gap in. So continuing on with basic construction, simple old stuff again, just putting these I imagine they're covers for intakes, but I'm not too sure what they are. Anyway, they go on simple enough. Then we've got some toolboxes along the side fenders as well, so we're just gluing them on. Again, it's best to clamp those down when you've got them in the right area and then run the glue around them, because you don't want a bead of glue around the outside, and that's what you'd get if you plastered that with glue. Now it would all splodge out the side, and that's what we're trying to avoid, so we're just doing this first. And again, the clamps do come in handy. Is that a sign of a good kit or a bad kit? You decide. What I'm surprised at is, again, given the age of this kit, how a lot of the parts are actually quite accurate, and more than that, the finesse of the moulding is surprising, to say the least. I find this with Italeri kits. A lot of the older ones, they're actually really quite good. I mean, you could look at aftermarket to add to this, and I'm not sure what you'd buy outside of the gun barrel. We'll say the gun barrel, obviously tracks. But, where would you use an etch set here? If you look at the hatches back there and the rivets and the hinges, it's all perfectly passable. There's no point sanding all of that off and replacing it with photo etch. It's probably more realistic having it like it is than doing that. I know Edward do the sand shields in photo etch, but again, unless you're looking up from the bottom of the model, I'm not sure why you would bother doing it, other than to fix accuracy issues. Now, I do realise that the actual Italeri boxing does have some problems with the front fenders. I couldn't tell you what they were. I looked at it and I just couldn't see any difference. I didn't know what the problem was, but wiser minds than me were assuring me in posts that there is a problem, so I'm sure there is, but unfortunately I can't pinpoint what that is for you. Now, that must be the sign of something that is not that important, but again, you decide for yourself. Basic construction complete. Again, the light guards at the front I was going to change out with wire, and when I looked at them, they're perfectly in scale. I was just using pictures from the Bovington example, finding them online, easy enough, and just matching bits and pieces up here and there, and all seemed very in order to me. I was, again, quite surprised, hence why I thought we'd share this video with you to make that known, because I think it's an important thing to not discount kits just for the sake of it. It's all very easy to be overly critical of some kits. Just having a wander around here. I've got all the tools glued on. I was going to paint it afterwards. I have actually painted this model up, and I'm just in the process of weathering it, so we might return to that. But I'm not guaranteeing this will be next week's video, for instance. At the minute, we're just going through a few build reviews while I'm trying to ramp up for the next big part of the series that we're going to do. I'm also trying to continue to give you regular content weekly. It's going okay at the minute. I'm keeping an eye on it. I can't promise it will stay weekly forever, because it is proving to be quite a lot of work. But nevertheless, for the minute, you know, there's enough videos in the pipeline for us to carry on weekly at the minute. But rest assured, I think it would only drop back to fortnightly for a period. If you would find that inexcusable, please let me know in the comments below. So there we go. That is the hull pretty much done, and now we're on to the turret. First off, we've got a couple of ejector pin marks. Very common for kits of this vintage. When you've got a block of plastic on the inside, it sucks the plastic in. That's why you get a sink mark. And it, you know, in the 70s, wasn't a massive concern. But these days, you don't tend to get it in kits. They do. Manufacturers are pretty good at trying to think of ways of getting around these problems. Now, simple stuff, that's just a bit of Plasto, the Revel filler. Just put in there and sand it back until you see the shape, basically. Once you see the shape of what you filled, you can be pretty sure that you're back level with the plastic around it. The next thing to look at is the gun barrel. Now, the way this joins, I couldn't work out. I didn't think it was very well thought through, to be honest. This is an RB model barrel, which is made for this kit. So I just tried to work out using the barrel that was already there and hoping that that was the right length. Just working out what we're going to do. So measuring it up and offering it up, we basically cut the old barrel away. And with the hole that's left, I just cut that smooth with my nippers here. Could obviously use a knife blade. Sharper the better, cleaner the cut. And once that was all sanded back flush, I thought, here we go, we can just push the barrel in, but that wasn't the case. On opening that up, I found that I did actually tear it a little bit. I think I used the knife blade. No problem. We just plaster it with super glue once we're happy that it's all level. So I basically get it in between this clamp, which holds the metal firm, and then I can by eye just level it up. And once I was happy, filled the hole with super glue. You don't see that rear part anyway, it's covered by the mantlet. And once I was happy that it was reasonably straight and level, glued it up, glued the mantlet on, finished off the rest of it, and attached it to the turret. Now you can see it's all glued up, using the machine gun there as well to level it up. Just checked here and there to make sure it was okay. What was throwing it off is the gun breech is not level, but we're not worried about that. We're not going to see that. As long as the barrel outside of the turret is level, that was all I was worrying about, and that's why I'm blanking that off there. So once we put it into the turret, you've got to twist it, and then you can just slide it in. Glue that down, and all is well. Now, this kit is designed to have those rear doors open, so you can kind of do the scene that Tamiya wanted you to use from the box art. And unfortunately, that means that there's not a great... It's not been fantastically thought out if you want to close the doors up. So there's a little bit of messing about to get this right. But ultimately, I think I'll get there in the end. I had to open up the areas where the hinges are and sand a little bit back as well, just to make it push in a bit further, so there's not a blooming great hole around the hinges. So once you was happy with that, you had to check the other area as well. There was a little pin at the front that was actually fouling it and wasn't looking right. And the problem I'm having is the doors are pushing too far in from the side of the turret. So I'm just cutting the bits of the hinge. That's what's the problem. You've got a cutout in the door and a fixed part in the side of the turret where you're pushing it together. The peg is a little bit too pronounced, so it's pushing the door out a little bit. So just a little bit of jiggery pokery, and we finally get those doors closed, glued up, and I use a little bit of sprue glue from the inside just to fill any of the gaps. And that's good enough. Toolbox glued up as well for the rear of the turret. And there we are. Everything offered up. I've glued the aerials on, glued the side lamp on, and put a little piece of wire coming out of the back of there. Just kind of having a look at it now. You can see how the gun barrel just changes it instantly. Makes it look a lot more realistic. Still movable as well. We've got elevation. Those aerials I have actually, at this point, cut off and replaced with some brass rod. And here we go. So these are the wheels, that iconic kind of Christie suspension design. And now we're going to put the tracks on. Now, these are not gluable tracks. They're meant to be pushed together with pins and heated. I don't do that because they're a little bit too long. So I actually cut a piece off. So you can see I've done one side, glued it up, got the sag in, but left it loose at the bottom and loose around the front and rear wheel. Those wheels are all glued on, by the way. Everything's got to be glued up because you're not going to get the sand shields on. So I've got to cut out one link, as you can see, or sort of a link. It's the join bit that joins the two parts of the track together. Now you can see the detail. I think that's reasonably good for vinyl tracks from the 1970s. So once we're ready and all the wheels are glued up, the first thing to do is just super glue one side of the tracks to the top of one of the wheels. I made life hard for myself, as I always do. I always do one side that I don't film to kind of learn the process, and then I do the side to film. One of the tracks was kinked. It's kind of warped. So that's just typical, but it's not a problem. It's fine. So just kind of glue that all the way along with super glue. Just pin it down along the top of the wheels, and once that super glue takes hold, you can then use the join to anchor the other part of the track around. Once we fed it around the sprocket as well, you can then pull it in like you see, tightens up, make sure it's all lined up with the wheels and the teeth are running inside the wheels, glue it down nice and tight, and you're away. Once you've got that pinned together, you can then work up along the rest of the running gear and get some sag in, which is what I've done here. It's all unnecessary though, because you can't see it when the sand shields are on. And speaking of sand shields, it's time to offer those up now. So you glue the front fender on, and that's already part of it, and you just anchor it in. It's a little bit of a funky old fit, but it's fine. It's not a problem. There's no way to anchor it, so I use just a little bit of super glue to hold it in place, and then use the plastic glue in the end to bring it together. So there we go. That brings this build to an end. So it's a little build review. I'm thoroughly impressed by this kit. It was enjoyable to build. Very nice to revisit a vintage kit. Lovely subject. Gun barrel's a must, and this particular gun barrel you get the two different counterweights for the different types of Crusaders that you see out there, so that's very useful as well. So overall I think this is brilliant. Now you could use the Italeri kit, and for the most part it would be similar, but there are a couple little perks in this Tamiya kit that make it better, but it is around £10 more. I don't know if the bits that you get in there are worth the £10. You have to look at that and make your own decision, but ultimately very impressed. So again, stay tuned to the series, because we will revisit this one and get it painted up at some point. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your comments down below whether you've got any Italeri stuff, and I'm sure not every Italeri kit is great, so let me know how you've got on with your kits in the past builds. As always, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give the video a like. If you want to support the channel, there's a couple of ways you can do that in the description below. And I'll see you in the next video.